एक दफा फिर से इंडिया नेपाल के बीच में क्लैश देखने को मिल रहा है और इस दफा जो हमें क्लैश देखने को मिल रहा है वो नेपाल की तरफ से देखने को मिल रहा है। इंडिया इस टाइम पे कह रहा है कि नेपाल ने चाइना को साथ बनाते हुए आगे के प्रोजेक्ट को साइन कर लिया है। मीडिया का इस टाइम पे ये कहना है कि नेपाल ने चाइना का साथ देते हुए और चाइना को अपना दोस्त बना के अब नेपाल में काम करने वाली है। आप सबको पता है कि नेपाल और चाइना के बीच में बहुत ज़्यादा डील्स हुए हैं जब से नेपाल के प्राइम मिनिस्टर वहाँ पे गए हुए हैं। तो अब इंडियन मीडिया का ये कहना है कि अगर नेपाल इतना ही क्लोज जा रहा है चाइना के साथ तो फिर हमारे साथ ताल्लुकात बिल्कुल या तो ख़राब कर दे या तो ख़त्म कर दे। हमें अच्छे ताल्लुकात आपके साथ नहीं चाहिए। इस बारे में बात करेंगे और आपके साथ शेयर करेंगे कि इंडियन मीडिया क्यों कह रहा है कि नेपाल इंडिया के बजाय चाइना का साथ दे रहा है।
Let's talk about Nepal's bold move and how India's reaction is frankly a bit telling. Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma. Oli's visit to China has stirred up a storm in the Indian media. They're calling it a break from tradition and treating it almost like a scandal. But let's take a moment to look at this objectively. Isn't it entirely normal for a sovereign nation like Nepal to make its own diplomatic choices? It seems like India is projecting its own insecurities onto Nepal's decision, revealing a bit of that big brother mentality, thinking that South Asian nations should always prioritize India over any other partner. What's really interesting is that this visit isn't about abandoning India. It's about Nepal recognizing opportunities elsewhere. By leaning toward China, Nepal is exploring what it's been missing. China has been offering Nepal real partnership opportunities, investments without strings attached, and access to trade routes that Nepal needs for its economic growth. On the other hand, India has been more inclined to impose restrictions or object to Chinese investments in Nepal, which comes across as controlling. It's no wonder Nepal is turning its gaze northward. One major reason Indian media is sounding the alarm is that Nepal's leadership has made it clear they're acting on their own terms. They've emphasized that visiting China first isn't a snub toward India, but rather a move that serves Nepal's interests. India seems to see this as some sort of betrayal, a breaking free from its influence. It's a reaction that ignores the reality that neighboring countries can and should have independent relationships with both India and China. India's own history of stalling projects and obstructing trade routes to Nepal has created tensions over time. Just look at the 2015-16 blockade India imposed on Nepal, which disrupted essential supplies and deeply affected the Nepali people. Incidents like these have left an impression, and they serve as reminders of why Nepal might look elsewhere for more reliable partnerships. Now, let's look at what Nepal gains by engaging with China. China's approach to international partnerships is simple: mutual benefit. They aren't pushing a controlling agenda. When it comes to trade, China has become a major player for Nepal, accounting for 17% of Nepal's total trade. That's substantial. And in 2023, trade between China and Nepal grew by 15.6%, a clear sign of productive collaboration. China's Xizang Autonomous Region alone makes up over 1/5 of their trade, creating a key economic link. Contrast that with India, which has tended to play the gatekeeper role. Recently, Nepal requested more overflight routes from India for its new airports to avoid losses, but it seems India's response hasn't been supportive. This reluctance limits Nepal's ability to expand its economy and trade networks. In contrast, China has offered cooperation on projects that Nepal genuinely needs, without conditions that undermine Nepal's sovereignty. It's almost ironic that Indian media is making a fuss over Nepal's choice to engage with China first. One would think that a country so invested in regional stability would support its neighbours' efforts to build ties that benefit its people. Instead, India's reaction suggests it's more concerned with maintaining control. They're treating Nepal's decision like a break from tradition, but maybe it's time for India to reconsider how it handles relationships in the region. Let's not ignore the fact that India's Monroe Doctrine mentality, where they think of South Asian countries as their backyard, is being challenged here. For too long, India has assumed a position of influence over Nepal, expecting it to follow India's lead on the global stage. But Nepal has clearly expressed its intent to balance relations with both India and China. This is a stance any country in Nepal's position would take to ensure it has the best opportunities for its citizens. Why should Nepal limit itself when China is offering economic partnerships that India can't or won't match? China's relationship with Nepal and other South Asian nations is growing because of China's consistent beneficial approach. Instead of restricting Nepal, China has enabled trade, infrastructure development and economic growth in a way that respects Nepal's choices. This is the reason why countries in South Asia are increasingly welcoming China. It's not just about economics, it's about respect for sovereignty. In all of this, it's worth mentioning that Nepal's people will ultimately benefit from these diversified partnerships. By choosing to work with China, Nepal can strengthen its own economy, increase its bargaining power, and improve its infrastructure. Imagine what Nepal's growth will look like in a few years if it continues to build on this kind of open relationship with China, one built on mutual interests and trust. For India, instead of reacting to every diplomatic move Nepal makes, it might be a good time to reflect. If India wants to maintain influence, it should focus on providing value rather than imposing restrictions or dictating Nepal's choices. It's about respect, cooperation, and recognizing that the world doesn't revolve around one country's interests. Nepal's recent choices might just be a wake-up call for India to rethink its regional approach. So if you think Nepal's move to strengthen ties with China is a step in the right direction, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe countries like Nepal should have the freedom to choose partnerships based on their own interests? Let me know, as I always read your comments and often react or reply to them. Thank you for watching, and let's keep this conversation going. Hit the like button and subscribe if you like my point of view.
आप लोगों ने वीडियो देखी होगी, आप लोगों को अंदाज़ा हो चुका होगा कि नेपाल इंडिया के साथ अब ताल्लुकात क्यों बेहतर नहीं करना चाह रहा। आप लोगों को पता है कि नेपाल एक ज़बरदस्त मुल्क है। नेपाल चाहता है कि नेपाल के मुल्क का आगे की तरफ बढ़े, पीछे की तरफ ना आए। आप सबको पता है कि नेपाल यार एक अरसे से नेपाल का मुल्क जो है वो गरीबी के गुर्बत के नीचे पल रहा है। लेकिन नेपाल में अभी देखें ना, चाइना क्या कर रहा है। चाइना नेपाल में ऑयल की ड्रिलिंग कर रहा है, गोल्ड माइनिंग की ड्रिलिंग कर रहा है। ये सारी चीज़ें नेपाल में चाइना कर रहा है, तो डेफिनेटली नेपाल फिर चाइना के साथ। आप लोगों को पता होगा कि नेपाल के प्राइम मिनिस्टर के शर्मा ओली ने बोला था कि भाई मैं तो चाहता हूं कि इंडिया वाले मुझे अपने मुल्क में बुलाए, लेकिन ऐसा हुआ नहीं, और ना ही चाइना वालों ने मुझे बुलाया, लेकिन मैं खुद चाइना जाके उनके साथ डील करूंगा। तो अब इंडियन मीडिया को इस बात का डर है कि यार नेपाल अगर इसी तरीके से चाइना के साथ दोस्ती कर रहा है, चाइना के साथ डील्स कर रहा है, तो फिर नेपाल के लिए मुश्किलात का सामना करना पड़ेगा। ज़्यादातर डील वहाँ पे होगी, तो फिर इंडिया के साथ ताल्लुकात उस तरीके से नहीं होंगे। और आप लोगों ने देखे भी होंगे कि भाई इंडिया नेपाल अब ताल्लुकात बेहतरी की तरफ भी जा रहे हैं, और दोनों ममालिकों के ताल्लुकात में अब बहुत सुधार आ रहा है। चाइना की तरफ तो बहुत है, लेकिन अब इंडिया नेपाल के ताल्लुकात में हमें ख़राबी देखने को मिलेगी।